live stream. I'm just live streaming after Ronaldo host did his live stream covering Cyril Ramaphosa's useless State of the Nation address for the nation of South Africa. So just hang on one second. Welcome to all you guys here. I'm going to go ahead and get this posted on the Telegram group. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope all is well. And just hang on one second. I'm going to go ahead and get this posted. And if you guys want to tune in, feel free to. I'll just hang on. Welcome you guys out there. And this is, okay, just hang on one second. All right. Cyril Ramaphosa's address was pretty useless. It was basically, and I believe people should get the vaccine. But by this point, if you're going to get the vaccine, you're going to get it. If you're not, you're not. Unless the government resorts to mandatory vaccinations, which I don't think they should. I'm against mandatory vaccinations for people. As much as I believe people should get the vaccine, I'm not going to sit here and say it should be mandatory. I think that is unconstitutional in both the United States and in South Africa. But he was basically encouraging people to get the vaccine. He didn't talk much about lifting restrictions, particularly at first, didn't talk much about lifting restrictions in South Africa. But for political gatherings indoor, there can be 750 people. And we all know that many EFF and ANC political gatherings, they don't adhere to mask and social distancing rules. So that's going to lead to the spread of the COVID, I firmly believe. Also, the ANC, they delivered a vaccine train for the rural areas of the Eastern Cape. They did this about 2 weeks ago. But my question is, why now? The municipal elections are going to be on November the 1st, and these were for the people in the rural areas of the Eastern Cape that wanted to get the vaccine. But why now? The only reason the ANC did this now and didn't do this sooner than they did was because they're trying to hang on to their rural vote. And in the rural areas, the predominant black areas in rural South Africa is still a huge ANC, pro-ANC area. But they were going to lose some of that momentum because this election, a lot of people right now are angry with the ANC due to a lot of lockdown measures, due to a lot of corruption scandals, due to the civil war within the ANC, the infighting between the pro-Zuma faction and the pro-Ramaphosa faction. And there's a lot of fighting between the two groups. And the ANC are destined to lose some votes, I firmly believe. Well, they take a vaccine train out to the Eastern Cape, the rural areas, almost right before the election. Basically, that was just to try to guilt trip the rural black population and to keep voting for the ANC. And that is a last desperate measure that they're going to have because the ANC, even by ANC supporters, the ANC is predicted to fall hard in this municipal election on November the 1st. The DA is predicted to do very, very well. Now, the question is going to be, can the DA and the FF Plus agree to work together and to combat the ANC? We all know the FF Plus is not going to be able to be the majority party. The FF Plus cannot oust the ANC by themselves. Do I think the FF Plus has a good mayoral candidate for Cape Town? I think they do. I saw the interview of Cape Town's mayoral candidate on Chris Wyatt Africa. I think the guy's a genuine guy, but I just hope it doesn't just take away because the guy did have a falling out with the Democratic Alliance over certain things. And then he ended up going to the ANC and working with Becky Seeley just for a little while, but then had a falling out there. Can the FF Plus and the DA resolve the differences that they have and be able to work together? Because I'm concerned that in Cape Town that the FF Plus candidate is going to take away enough DA votes that the DA nor the FF Plus are going to get the majority, and the ANC comes swoop in. And we all know if the Western Cape falls then to the ANC, then all of South Africa is going to fall. I hope I'm wrong on this. I really do hope I'm wrong on this, but that is what's liable to happen. Like I said, I hope I'm wrong. and the DA and the FF Plus have to find a way to resolve their differences, and they have to work together. Regardless, even if you're going to vote ANC, which I don't think you should, but go out and vote, okay? A lot of people in South Africa shed blood, white, black, colored, Indian, so all South Africans can vote. Okay, Butsarko says, I followed your advice and got Vaxbreak, getting my second jab tomorrow. Okay, Butsarko, have you had any side effects? When I got my first jab, I was a little bit fatigued. My arm hurt a little bit, but beyond that, I didn't have much. My father had a little bit of fatigue as well. Now, me and my father both had Pfizer. My brother had Moderna. So which one did you have, number one? And number two, how are you feeling right now? Nice to hear from you, Butsarko. Oh, speaking of vaccines, now, Germany has recently given over 200,000 AstraZeneca vaccines to Namibia, but yet Namibians are still complaining that Germany is not doing enough, or many Namibians, not all, but many Namibians are, same Pfizer. Well, yeah, I got Pfizer as well, no problems, and my dad had, my brother had Moderna and no problems. So I'm actually, because it's been almost 8 months since my second Pfizer jab, I'm eligible for my booster vaccine in a few weeks, but I'm going to get an antibodies test before I go get the booster vaccine to make sure I actually need it, because I've still been very careful even after getting vaccinated. But I am going to a rock concert on Tuesday. That's the first rock concert I've been to in like 10, 15 years, but it's the rock band Kiss, and Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons had been both singing at concerts for about 3 to 4 weeks at a time, obviously without the mask, because you have to remove your mask to be able to sing like that. Well, they had gotten the vaccine, but then they also got the COVID, but they also had light cases. So they recovered pretty quickly. So this is the first concert I've been to in years. And if it took what it took for them to get the COVID, then I think if I just go to a concert, double mask up, and just stay at the concert for a few hours, I think I'll be fine. I'm not going to eat or drink at the concert, and that's that. But anyways, okay, back to talking about Africa. Okay, Southern Africa, in Rwanda, Mozambique. Rwanda has sent troops to Mozambique, and because the Rwandan military has kind of been took the lead in the fighting instead of the Mozambican military, the Rwandan forces have driven a lot of the ISIS and ISIS sympathizer extremists away from Cabo Delgado, away from key cities in Mozambique. Now, Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, had recently taken a trip to the nation of Mozambique to visit his soldiers, and the villagers had really admired the Rwandan soldiers. They said they were very tough, very courteous, and very professional, and very competent at their jobs, and that there was very little incidents of rape or looting from the Rwandan soldiers. Sky News just recently did an excerpt on the situation in Mozambique, and Rwanda had a right and needed to take the lead, because I can tell you, as an American, President Biden has not offered soldiers, and typically the UK is not going to follow in that situation without the US leading. So Biden hasn't offered, Boris hasn't offered. So had Paul Kagame not did what he did to go into Mozambique, I can tell you that those extremists would have conquered northern Mozambique, and they would have tried to set their sights on South Africa, because we know how poor the poor of a state the South African National Defense Forces are, thanks to the ANC's money mismanagement of government funds. South Africa's Air Force is basically grounded. They almost have no functional planes. And 15% of the South African National Defense Forces are HIV positive. And Liberia has a professional and competent military force, but they're like the UK. They're typically not going to go in a situation like that without the United States taking the lead. And that's something, you saw the Afghanistan debacle, that's something that President Biden is probably not going to do. I hate to say it. Now, as far as East Asia goes, that's a different story. He did the right thing by getting Australia to cancel the submarine deal with France, and have the U.S. and Australia share nuclear technology to counter China's aggression in that specific area. France is an ally to the United States, but France's role in East Asia is very little, if minimum, very little, if any, nowadays. Now, France did send a contingent of soldiers, a battalion of soldiers to the Korean War, but that was 70 years ago. But Australia and the United States are at the forefront of combating Chinese aggression in the South China Sea. And a lot of Chinese territory, a lot of the territories in the South China Sea, the Spratly Islands, they legally belong to the Philippines. And so does the Scarborough Shoal. Well, the Philippines does not have a capable navy of conquering the Chinese Navy. Now, their army can hold out until the U.S. Army arrives if the Chinese military lands in the Philippines. But I think the Chinese government knows that, and they're not going to try to invade the Philippines on land. They are, because they know that their army, while their army is not very well funded in the Philippines, they are actually very professional and very, very competent. And the Filipinos can hold out on them on land, but on sea, it's a different story. So Biden has done okay there. He's also met with South Korea. He's terminated a lot of Trump policies with North Korea. With the bromance with Kim Jong-un is not happening anymore, which most Republicans and Democrats agree with that the Trump-Kim Jong-un bromance was not right. It wasn't going to accomplish anything, and it really hadn't. North Korea is still steadily developing their nuclear weapons. Now, sanctions have been developed, pushed on North Korea, and the Royal Navy, the UK Navy, is in a dismal state, but one of their ships has been doing reconnaissance and catching companies of all different nationalities trying to deal business with North Korea, and then they're photographing what companies they are and then telling the United States. Pretty much the state of the Royal Navy right now, that's pretty much all the Royal Navy can do for the United States and South Korea at the moment. But it's a good thing that needs to be done as far as that goes. But as far as the Middle East and Africa and in Afghanistan, Biden has been a disaster. And don't expect Biden to come to your aid if the ISIS rebels in Mozambique come to South Africa, or if they come to Lesotho, or if they come to Eswatini. So Rwanda had to take the lead in that situation. And I know you guys have probably seen the film Hotel Rwanda with Don Cheadle playing Paul Rusesabagina. The movie, even though it was based on the Rwandan genocide in 1994, it was filmed in South Africa. The film Hotel Rwanda, well, George Terry, who directed it, as well as Don Cheadle, who played in it, they didn't do their research properly. And I made videos on this. And while Paul Kagame, people could argue that you would not need to go kidnapping beyond countries. I get that. And Paul Kagame has not been the most democratic leader for Rwanda. But he's trying to get to the point where people in Rwanda are not being recognized as Hutu or Tutsi. And then there's a minority that makes up less than 1% called the Twa, where people aren't going to know if somebody's Hutu or Tutsi, to avoid a 1994 Rwandan genocide, to avoid repeating what happened in 1994. Well, Paul Rusesabagina had fled the country when Paul Kagame had taken power in Rwanda. He was critical of the Kagame regime, and Paul Rusesabagina charged outrageous public speaking fees when he spoke about the situation in Hotel Rwanda, which he embezzled a lot of the money. He forced the refugees to pay. Cameron Zede says, "Hey, Brett, hope you're doing well." Hey, Cameron, how are you? Long time no speak, so hope you're doing well, Cameron. Well, okay. Well, Paul Rusesabagina had charged outrageous public speaking fees, and what he was doing was he was using that money to fund a Hutu extremist group that was trying to take back Rwanda. That's number one. That group has been responsible for at least 9 civilian casualties. The Hutu extremist group is called the FLN. And many Rwandans had welcomed Paul Rusesabagina's imprisonment and his sentencing because of that. Also, Paul Rusesabagina, when he was at the Hotel Mille des Collines, he was at another hotel first, but it was owned by the same Belgian company. Well, when that hotel got destroyed, he moved to the Mille des Collines, and he forced the refugees, the 1,200 refugees that took refuge in that hotel, he forced them to pay to stay, pay whatever they could. Now, even though it was a genocide and all that, you understand, I mean, whether if I agree with it or not, I get people have to make a living. It was still pretty cold for him to do that. Well, the banking system wasn't working at the time, so the hotel company in Belgium was not getting money. And Paul Rusesabagina kept charging the refugees, and the staff wasn't getting paid either, so the staff was like, where is the money? Many of the staff objected to him charging the refugees, but the staff's like, well, you're charging them, so where is our money? And Paul Rusesabagina would never say where the money was. That never happened. The only working telephone typically in the entire hotel was Paul Rusesabagina's fax machine and the telephone in Paul Rusesabagina's office. Well, the main office in Belgium, who owned Hotel Mille des Collines, the main office had said, stop charging the refugees. We're not going to pay them. We're going to help them. And the CEOs were his bosses, but he ignored the order. So, I mean, you could argue bringing in a Rwandan agent to the United States, because Paul Rusesabagina, since he left Rwanda, he's only been back about once or twice. He has split time between Belgium, where he's a citizen. Now, he's not a citizen of the U.S. and the state of Texas, but he has resident status there. And President George W. Bush, when he was in office, he rewarded Paul Rusesabagina the Medal of Freedom. I hate to say it, but that's not something that he should have done, because he didn't research the genocide to know, and didn't interview survivors in Hotel Rwanda. So here's where I'm getting my sources on how Paul Rusesabagina really was. The book Inside Hotel Rwanda by Edward Kayihara. Edward Kayihara was actually a refugee inside Hotel Rwanda that was the victim of Paul Rusesabagina's cruelty. That's number one. Number two, Romeo Dallaire, who was the head the general of the UN forces in Rwanda at the time, he hated the film Hotel Rwanda. Nick Nolte played a Canadian colonel in that movie, but Romeo Dallaire was not a colonel, he was a general, and Romeo Dallaire and Paul Rusesabagina actually never met each other. They weren't friends. They actually didn't make any contact with one another. Now, we all know the whole story. The RIB, the Rwandan Investigative Bureau agent, disguised himself as a Burundian pastor and said, can you come to Burundian churches and tell us about your role in the Rwandan genocide? Well, the plane landed in Rwanda, and then Paul Rusesabagina went to jail. Now, Human Watch has condemned this. A lot of people have, and I understand why they have, but they also need to read the story, and they need to, if they're going to release Paul Rusesabagina, and if they're going to demand that he needs to be free, well, here's what the U.S. needs to do. They need to, if they're going to free him, and I understand why they want to, the U.S. needs to rescind the U.S. Presidential Medal of Freedom that they awarded to Paul Rusesabagina. They need to do that. The film Hotel Rwanda needs to be denounced by the U.S. government. The U.S. government, and Romeo Dallaire's worked with U.S. Marines before, they need to bring Romeo Dallaire in and let Romeo Dallaire tell the truth about what happened at Hotel Mille des Collines during the 1994 genocide. Then, if those three things are met, then I think it's okay that they release Paul Rusesabagina. I understand that. And also, to the South African viewers here, I am not South African, and there have been a lot of 1994 Rwandan genocide perpetrators that have sought refuge in South Africa, also some of Paul Kagame's government critics, and Paul Kagame has sent assassins and hitmen into South Africa, and sometimes they don't exactly measure collateral damage the best, and that can be problematic and it can be dangerous for your family. So I understand that. Also, if you guys don't know this, Nelson Mandela's daughter, Zenani Mandela, is now South Africa's ambassador to South Korea. And I believe this is very, very problematic because Zenani Mandela, along with her sister Zinzi, now, God rest Zinzi's soul, I wasn't a fan of her, but I did not want Zinzi to pass away from COVID-19. But just like Zinzi had no right to be ambassador to Denmark and bring all that racial tension and race hustling to Denmark. Zanani Mandela has no right to be doing that in South Korea. Now, with that being said, Zanani Mandela is 62 years old. Typically, an ambassadorship for a South African, from what I've heard, is typically when somebody's on the way out towards retirement. And they're on their way out towards retirement, and that the South Korean government has made sure she's honored the white South African Air Force pilots that have been in the Korean War. And also, the South Korean government has also sent a lot of the masks to the South African Korean War veterans and their families themselves. And they have made sure South African embassy in Seoul, South Korea, that the masks get there, or they make it a point to deliver it themselves, and then they deliver it to the South Korean embassy. And I want to say Pretoria is where the embassy is, but I'm not quite sure. It's either Pretoria or I think Cape Town. But they'll deliver it to the South Korean embassy and consulates in South Africa to make sure that the veterans and their families get the medical mask for COVID-19 to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And they've done that with veterans from all countries. They've done that with Ethiopian Korean War veterans and their families, Canadian Korean War veterans and their families, American Korean War veterans and their families, Colombian Korean War veterans and their families, and so forth. So that's the latest news in Africa-Asia relations that I'm aware of. Now, we do know that Zanani Mandela was recently with the EFF, and she thanked the EFF, a political party that has denounced her father and has thrown dung at statues of him and demanding that statues of her father be released and then be replaced by her mother, the notorious murderer, Winnie Mandela, who murdered a 13-year-old guy named Stumpy. That's a different story. But we do know during the divorce that the daughters, Zinzi and Zanani, sided with the mom over the dad, and even though they're still in the ANC, they've made friends with a lot of EFF, and she thanked the EFF for honoring her mom, and she flew all the way from South Korea to South Africa to do that. She was only wearing a mask part of the time, and a lot of people in that EFF rally were not wearing a mask. They were not social distancing. So if she's been vaccinated, even if she has been vaccinated, she needs to undergo a mandatory 2-week quarantine, which is normal for non-South Koreans entering South Korea at the moment, whether if they have been vaccinated or not. So that's that. So yeah, so I mainly came to talk to you guys about what was going on in the situation in Mozambique, and you obviously know that's going to affect you guys, but also the municipal elections. Look, whether if you're voting for the FF Plus or the DA or the ANC or the EFF, I recommend that you don't vote for the EFF or the ANC, or you're not going to get change. But regardless, go out and vote. Okay, your Afrikaner ancestors got thrown in concentration camps, so you guys could vote. If you're black, your anti-apartheid ancestors shed blood so you could vote. If you were, or if you're any color anti-apartheid activist, I mean, a lot went through. Regardless, a lot went through, so all South Africans could vote. Exercise your right to vote. If you guys don't vote, then don't expect a lot of sympathy from me. If you guys don't vote, people need to get out there. They need to get registered to vote and vote November the 1st, regardless of who you're voting for. But like I said, I believe the DA has the best chance to unseat the ANC in the first go, regardless if you agree with the DA or not. There's a lot I don't agree with them on. You have to think with your head and not your heart, and the DA has the best chance to unseat the ANC, with the exception in KwaZulu-Natal. In KwaZulu-Natal, it's probably the Inkatha Freedom Party. If I was in KwaZulu-Natal, I would seriously consider voting IFP over DA, because they're an anti-corruption party, and they've started including non-Zulu members. Now, they do support EWOC, so I would take a long, hard look before I would vote for Inkatha Freedom Party. But the number one goal right now, at the moment, needs to be, can we unseat the African National Congress? I mean, I mean, let's just put it that way. I mean, that needs to be the #1 goal. So if you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to type in there. Bootsarko says, agree, DA all the way. Yeah, I agree with you, Bootsarko. I think that's the best option for South Africa right now. I just do. And I think with what the FF Plus is trying in Cape Town is very dangerous, because I think that opens the door to bring the ANC, to make them the majority party in the Western Cape or in Cape Town. And if that happens, then all of South Africa is done for. I hate to say it, but it's true. I mean, unless the FF Plus and the DA can find a way to go into coalition together and to differences aside, that's just what's going to have to happen. I'm being realistic. I'm not being biased one way or the other. Oh. Rarely does South Africa make U.S. news, but you guys know about the female policeman who was basically ended up being a serial killer, and it shocked a lot of people because she was a very respected cop that won several commendations and several awards. But that female cop serial killer trial has been occupying South Africa for a while, and it's really not a laughing matter. It is some sick stuff. She hired hitmen to kill her family members, and most of it was at her hiring the hitman. But her sister, she actually poisoned the sister's tea, and killed one of the sisters herself. And because a lot of this family had her as the beneficiary of her life insurance, so she was trying to collect their life insurance money. And the hitman, it was even getting too much for the hitman. The hitman had finally backed off and called the SAPS, the South African Police Services, and the South African Police and they became informants for the South African Police Services. And it is just shit. And I saw her in trial just a few days ago. I believe that whole thing was just a facade. She didn't look, I mean, she also killed her boyfriend as well, because she wanted his insurance money as well. And it looked like fake tears. It looked like she's trying to get found innocent by reason of insanity, but I think she was plenty sane when she did this, and she's going to pay the price. I mean, it's just a sick, sad situation, regardless of, regardless of what one's political views are. It's just sick. And she betrayed the badge. She betrayed the uniform by doing this. It's just, like I said, it's just a sick, sadistic situation, and you just want it to... You never want something like that to happen in any country, but this is, I mean, South Africa's gained international notoriety on this one. This one made Yahoo News, and it's just, like I said, just a sad, sick, sadistic situation. So, again, if you guys have any more questions or comments, just feel free to ask me. When Cyril Ramaphosa went to the United States to demand reparations and say that that slavery, and yes, slavery was wrong, and said that a lot of Africans or people of African descent are still being felt the victimhood of slavery. Well, here's the thing. Okay, Cyril, Mali, as Roman Cabernac in his YouTube channel Morning Shot pointed out, Roman Cabernac has a good channel. I recommend that you guys check it out and subscribe there if you haven't. Well, he pointed out, and Roman Cabernac's half French, half Moroccan, but he lives in South Africa. Well, Roman Cabernac said in Mali now, and it's blacks enslaving blacks in Mali, there are 200,000 slaves in Mali to this day. And the French government, when they controlled Mali, tried to abolish slavery. In 1905, they did. To their credit, they did. I'm not condoning French colonialism, but they tried to abolish slavery. And they did. But when Mali became independent, slavery was restored. And 200,000 people are living in slavery in Mali, as he pointed out. And that's black-on-black enslavement. Ramaphosa made no mention of that. And he also wants to talk about white supremacy with slavery, and we need affirmative action and everything else. Well, let's go to modern-day Mauritania, also known as Mauritania. Mauritania, there is still slavery there. Now, Mauritania became the last country in the world to abolish slavery in 1981. And it technically was abolished in 1981. And then in 2007, they signed an international treaty that they would prosecute slaveholders. But since 2007, only one slaveholder has been prosecuted. Only one slaveholder has been prosecuted. There is still a lot of Arabs enslaving Africans. Bantus make up about 13% of Mauritania's population, and they account for a lot of slaves in Mauritania. Cyril Ramaphosa made no mention of what's going on in Mauritania. He also made no mention of what's going on in Mali. Eric Holtzkamp says apparently she took out those insurance policies on her family. I would not be surprised. There's a lot of conflict, rather, if those people actually made her the beneficiaries. No worries, no apologies. I'm pretty random myself, so I'm not going to criticize others for doing it. No, apparently, I mean, there is argument whether if she did it herself or if this female serial killer that's a cop or was a cop, if she did it herself or if she was the beneficiary of their insurance policies. But more than likely, she fraudulently forged a lot of signatures and stuff and made herself the beneficiary of those life insurance policies. And like I said, sad situation, and that trial is occupying a lot of South African news. And, you're a little bit behind. Yep. Buffering can be a problem. From the South Africans I met in South Korea, now compared to the United States, I thought South Korea's internet was slow. But South Africans told me that compared to South African internet, South Korean internet was like that. Bam, 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 bam. So no worries. I've heard plenty of stories about internet in Africa and Wi-Fi in South Africa. It's not exactly the prettiest thing. Let's just put it that way. So yeah, I mean, he didn't mention slavery in Mauritania. He also didn't mention slavery in Mali as well. And Mauritania used to be a French territory as well. And French is one of their recognized languages and one of the more common languages that all Mauritanians speak, in addition to Arabic. Well, the French government tried abolishing slavery in Mauritania as well, but once Mauritania broke away from France, they reinstated it. I mean, that's just how it is. I'm not saying there are Nigerians that go to Mauritania and work on a guest worker program, and Mauritania has a good fishing industry. And there have been Nigerians that have said they have not felt discrimination in Mauritania, but they also say that it's not a free country. You can't go where you want to go. You can't practice any religion that you want to practice. There's very little freedom of religion. It's an Islamic state. And now they're not ISIS sympathizers. Their military works with the U.S. military and the Spanish military. I'm not bashing them. But the institution of slavery is horrid, and more than one slaveholder needs to be prosecuted under the court of law in that situation. And Ramaphosa made no mention of that at the UN General Assembly. Now, he thanked the U.S. for the vaccine donations that the U.S. gave them, but Gravitational Time Vortex says, not against the vax, but if you're already vaxxed, why would you be worried if someone else is on them, not you? Well, yes, I can see what you're saying on that, but when you're concerned about your nation as a whole or your state as a whole or the world as a whole, you want everybody else to be okay too. It's not about you. Now, yes, you got to take care of yourself before you're able to take care of everybody else, but that's why I went and got the vaccine. I'm not going to sit here and say you should get the vaccine and not do it myself, if that makes sense. And plus, the more people, I mean, I'm not trying to, because this is not a vaccine stream, but studies show the more people that are vaxxed, the more that it can curb the spread of the COVID-19. And if it can't do that, which is predicted to, people who are vaxxed have a 91% chance of not getting a serious case of the COVID if they get the COVID. Now, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a scientist, but those are what the studies say. And I will say this, since the vaccines have increased in Mississippi, cases are going down. I mean, like it or not, I'm not trying to agree with Ramaphosa on the vaccine or disagree with him, but since vaccines have gone up, cases have gone down. Now, we shall see, being 750 people in a political event, not social distancing or wearing a mask, We shall see. But at the moment, the vaccines have increased, but so have the cases have decreased. No, that gravitational time vortex, that is not correct. Not the more people vax, the more mutations. There are mutations in and of itself, but the vax doesn't have anything to do with the mutations. The vax does not have anything to do with the mutations. Viruses can mutate on their own, and that's even the CDC doesn't recommend a measles vaccine if you've had the measles. The same is true for smallpox. Well, look, I've had the measles vaccine. As a kid, I've never had the measles. Okay? Smallpox is not prevalent in the United States, so I'm not sure if I had the smallpox vaccine or not, but I had the measles vaccine as a kid, never had the measles. All the stuff I've gotten vaccinated for, I've never had. That's all I'm going to say on that. Well, yeah, let me explain this. Like every year that I remember to get the flu shot, I typically don't get the flu. I never have, actually. I'm not saying that's like that for everybody, but the times I've forgotten to get the flu shot, I've gotten the flu. Not saying everybody's been like that, but I'm saying that is what's happened to me. That's all I'm gonna say. I mean, that's exactly what has happened to me in that situation. So yeah, take it with a grain of salt if you want to, but that's exactly what's happened to me. All right, I don't know if Chris White is going to be doing a live stream in about 5 minutes or not. Shouldn't it be the same with the current virus? You're saying gravitate. Look, this is not a COVID stream. I'm not going into that. Okay, this is not a COVID stream, and Chris White is probably going to be on the air in about 5 or 10 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and end this stream right here. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for tuning in. Much appreciated. And I hope everybody is doing well. And thanks again, guys, for tuning in. And be sure to go over to Chris White when he starts his Night Owl stream. So thank you, Gravitational Time Vortex. Have a blessed day as well. And thanks for the debate on that. It's just, like I said, I wasn't there to talk about COVID. I was there to talk about some other current events that had gone on. So anyways, hope everybody's doing well. Take care. God bless them. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.